What would it really look like if millions of undocumented immigrants were suddenly deported from the United States? Donald Trump is blustering about mass deportations. In fact, he has made immigration enforcement the focal point of his campaign in the final days before the presidential election. In this video, we're assessing Trump's mass deportation plan to uncover the true costs, logistical challenges, and potential impacts on families, communities, and the economy. You'll learn why experts say this proposal faces major hurdles and could have far-reaching consequences for all Americans. And we're starting right now. I'm Brian Manning, and I used to be an asylum officer with the government, but now, as an asylum lawyer, well, I help immigrants all over the country to secure their future in America through asylum. Let me know in the comments if you've got an asylum case pending, or maybe you're considering applying. And listen, I'd especially like to hear from you if you've been waiting for an asylum interview with USCIS for multiple years. Let me know how long. All right, let's dive into what Trump's mass deportation plan would really look like if implemented. So the former president has made sweeping promises about expeditiously deporting millions of undocumented immigrants, but the reality is complex. Trump's plan centers on carrying out what he calls the largest domestic deportation operation in American history. He's proposing to invoke a centuries-old law, use military forces, including the National Guard, and create large-scale detention facilities near the border. The cornerstone of this plan is the use of the Alien Enemies Act, a 226-year-old law that allows the president to detain and deport people from hostile nations during wartime. Now, Trump claims he'd use this to expedite the removal of gang members and dismantle migrant criminal networks. But here's the thing. This law has only been used 3 times in US history, all during actual declared wars. Legal experts say Trump wouldn't have the authority to use it for mass deportations in peacetime. Now, let's talk about the logistical feasibility of this plan. During Trump's previous term, his administration carried out about 1.5 million deportations over 4 years. Now, that's far short of the millions he's promising now. Even at its peak, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, has never removed more than about 400,000 people in a single year. The infrastructure just isn't there for the kind of mass deportations that Trump envisions. We're talking about potentially 11 million undocumented immigrants spread out across the entire country. So finding, detaining, and deporting that many people would require a massive expansion of ICE's capabilities. By the way, if you want to maximize your chances for success with asylum, then be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you don't miss the insights that I share on this channel. Okay, let's look closer at some of the numbers. So Trump advisor Stephen Miller has talked about holding millions of people in large-scale staging grounds near the border. Now, to put that in perspective, it would take almost 5 cities the size of Houston to house 11 million people. And if they were to be quickly expelled, as Trump prefers, we'd need over 58,000 flights in fully loaded Boeing 737s. The costs associated with this plan would be astronomical. In 2016, ICE estimated that it cost about $10,900 to apprehend, detain, process, and remove a single undocumented immigrant. Adjusted for inflation, we're looking at well over $100 billion to deport everyone, and that's likely a conservative estimate given the scale of the operation that Trump is proposing. But it's not just about the direct costs. The economic impact of removing millions of workers from the US economy would be severe. Undocumented immigrants make up about 5% of the workforce, with even higher percentages in industries like construction, agriculture, and service. Now, economists warn that mass deportations would lead to labor shortages, increased labor costs, and ultimately higher prices for consumers. Beyond that, businesses that rely on immigrant labor would likely struggle to expand or even maintain current operations if they suddenly lost a significant portion of their workforce. Also, undocumented immigrants contribute an estimated $96.7 billion annually in taxes, and that revenue would be gone if these folks were suddenly forced to leave. Deporting them would also directly affect US-born workers. You see, studies suggest that for every million unauthorized immigrants deported, about 88,000 US-born workers would actually lose their jobs. Now, this is because many businesses would have to downsize or close without their immigrant workforce, affecting US citizens employed by these companies as well. All right, let's talk about the human cost, which would be severe. There are an estimated 4.4 million US citizen children with at least one undocumented parent. Mass deportations would tear apart these families, potentially leaving millions of American kids without their parents. We saw smaller scale versions of this during the Trump administration, with traumatized children left behind after workplace raids. The impact on communities would be devastating. Many undocumented immigrants have deep ties to their communities, having lived in the US for decades. Their sudden removal would leave holes in neighborhoods, schools, and local economies. There's also the question of where deported individuals would go. You see, some countries refuse to accept large numbers of deportees, and others are slow to provide travel documents. So this could lead to prolonged detentions, which the Supreme Court has ruled against under certain circumstances. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Is this even legal? While presidents have broad authority over immigration enforcement, Trump's plan would face significant legal challenges. The use of the military for domestic law enforcement is generally prohibited, and the application of the Alien Enemies Act in peacetime would likely be contested in court. Moreover, due process rights apply to everyone in the US, regardless of immigration status. The current immigration court system is already backlogged with millions of cases, and trying to process millions more would overwhelm the system, potentially leading to years-long waits for hearings. And let's not forget about the international implications. Mass deportations could strain relationships with other countries, particularly in Latin America, and it could also impact US standing on the global stage, potentially affecting trade relationships and diplomatic efforts. So what's the bottom line? While Trump's mass deportation plan might sound straightforward on the campaign trail, the reality is far more complex. The logistical, legal, and economic challenges are immense. The human cost would be severe, tearing apart families and communities. And the long-term impacts on the US economy could be far-reaching and potentially devastating. Experts across the political spectrum agree that comprehensive immigration reform is needed, but most argue that mass deportations are not a realistic or beneficial solution. As we approach the election, it's crucial for voters to understand the full implications of such proposals. And remember, immigration policy affects all of us, whether directly or indirectly. It impacts our economy, our communities, and our values as a nation. As we debate these issues, it's important to look beyond campaign slogans and consider the real-world consequences of proposed policies. Listen, if you're ready to take the next step and get help with your asylum case, then please call my office today. That number is 713-909-0401. And remember, we help people all over the country, so it doesn't matter where you live. Call us now to schedule an Asylum Strategy Session so that we can help you to secure your future in America through asylum. Again, I'm Brian Manning, and it's truly an honor to serve you in your asylum journey.